South Africa enters the second wave of COVID-19 infection this week. Commencement of the COVID-19 vaccine trials in the United Kingdom. We've seen parts of Europe have started. Hope for many is on the way, but the question remains whether or not the vaccine will be rolled out to all countries, including the African continent, once its efficacy have been confirmed and approved. Pharmaceutical companies in Africa are also watching developments quite closely. For more, we joined from Johannesburg by 360 Global Solutions Group CEO Khandani Msibi. Msibi, welcome to SA Today. Thank you indeed for joining us, sir. We sit here, Msibi, after speaking to somebody on the front line. Let's speak to somebody who are helping with this cause, because it's all hands on board. How does one even start to consider a vaccine? We've seen the likes of UK have started testing. We know that the Russians have always said there's something along the lines. We know the Americans will soon pass it, although there's still tug and pull with the Donald Trump exiting administration and the Biden administration. But the people who have the money will roll it out just like that. In fact, by the end of the year, I believe that most first world countries will have a vaccine and will have started vaccinating their people. We sit on the continent and we say, oof, when will we have our first one, if at all, come to our shores?
Tabiso, thank you very much. And I would like to echo your sentiments with regards to the frontline healthcare workers. I think it's almost like the world is in a world war, and the army is healthcare workers and scientists. And we're really grateful to the work that they're doing to keep us alive. As we face this virus that has wreaked havoc throughout the world. I think from a pharmaceutical perspective, one of the crisis or the risk that COVID has highlighted is the lack of local pharmaceutical capability in our country, as well as in the developing world. I think healthcare is one of those areas that should be prioritized, and countries invest in making sure that they can take care of themselves. As we have seen that the countries that own the technologies are going to prefer themselves. They're going to be first on the queue. But I'm hoping that with COVAX that has been spearheaded globally, that developing countries will also get into the queue sooner than we fear they may. But there are going to be challenges, mostly logistics challenges, in the event that we get the manufacturing capacity that will supply the world. That you look at the Pfizer vaccine, it needs to be stored at minus 70 degrees for logistics purposes. And as you know, that the developing world struggles with one cold chain distribution. It also struggles with refrigeration as energy is a crisis in a number of those countries. So we're at a point where the scientific world has been challenged and stretched to come up with very quick solutions to this pandemic. And I think the fact that we're beginning to see the vaccines being rolled out, the UK becoming the first to actually begin to administer the vaccine, indicates that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, that we are going somewhere in terms of defeating this virus.
Now, your company, has interest in pharmaceuticals. How did you feel, to see vaccine trials commencing in the United Kingdom this week? Obviously, as somebody who's within the space, you'd like to say, look, come on, guys, you are El Nyana, let's see what you have, let's work together, which is what South Africa and India have called for, because at the end of the day, that's what your job is. As you said, pharmaceuticals will go a long way, in particular this year, where the turnover for finding a vaccine has been phenomenal. Normally, 5, 6, 10 years sometimes to find a vaccine?
I think the rate of innovation is bolstered by the fact that some of the vaccine technologies are well developed, and therefore you have a platform that you just modify for the virus that you're dealing with. So vaccines are not new in the world, and some of the techniques that have come up have been developed before for other applications, and therefore over time it becomes much more easier and quicker to actually reformulate products for different applications. I mean, you can imagine how long it took to make the first automobile and how long it is taking now to make automobiles. As technology progresses and science captures the practice and the knowledge and repeat over and over and over, it becomes easier and easier. So we are not surprised to see that countries like Russia came up with Sputnik, and that technology has always been there. It was a question of adaptation for COVID that they were able to bring in a vaccine much earlier, or as early as other companies like Pfizer. But South Africa, we don't have innovation capability utilization. The innovation capability is there, but we don't utilize it to the extent that we can be ready as quickly as other developed countries, because we are not by any stretch of imagination an underdeveloped country. In particular, from the scientific point of view, we do have very powerful, very strong, very innovative institutions in the country, like the CSIR, Wits University, UCT, and quite a number of private institutions that have research capability. But I think what has happened over the years is that our state has not looked at pharmaceutical localization as a priority, and as such there isn't much investment that has gone to ensure that we always have armaments ready in the event that we are attacked by a virus.
Yeah, I think that was going to be my next question: how ready is South Africa within the actual space? Because we do know that, I mean, as you rightfully said, we're pretty capable. It's just think things like you spoke about the if the vaccine does come out to South Africa or to the continent, it's about how we freeze them, for example. I mean, transporting them. You spoke about Pfizer, minus 70 degrees. That's the cold rooms that the vaccines must be kept. There's another vaccine that I know has been touted to be possibly the best one for the African continent. Give or take now, let's say the time frame. Let's say we jump onto COVAX, as we've heard by today, the Solidarity Fund said they helping South Africa 327 million towards the COVAX fund. Let's say we get that first batch of vaccines come maybe early January next year. Where to? How do we start this? How has South Africa been affected by the COVID-19? We know that the numbers, we now reached our second wave. The numbers speak of a new kind of infections. 17 to 19-year-olds, kids you would think, come on, they'll be safer, but they'll be asymptomatic. They'll bring it home to Kokonumkulu. The school holidays are closing. Where do we even start when we start our vaccination process here at home? The UK has said we start with everyone Umdala, 91-year-olds, 81-year-olds, but obviously, depending where you are, you got to prioritize. Where do we start on the continent?
I think South Africa is in a much more fortunate position in terms of the cold chain for distribution purposes. It is well developed, and in the event that we get a vaccine that is approved in South Africa, the clinicians have indicated, high-risk individuals like the aged, as well as the frontline healthcare workers who are exposing themselves on our behalf to infection by the virus. But I think that part is well defined, and we look forward to see a strong leadership in this area, because when you are dealing with a virus, and we've seen what has happened in South Africa, in the rest of the world, that nobody is really wise, because any good decision may turn out to be a bad decision. And we've seen countries that have not locked down, getting to a position where they need to lock down. We've seen what the lockdown has done to our economy and the economies of other countries. So we're at the point where the healthcare leaders, both politically, clinicians and the pharmaceutical industry, have to provide day-to-day leadership on this matter. It is not something that you can fix a decision because you've just alluded now to the young getting infected with the virus. It's something that initially was not a consideration that much, but it's playing itself out there. So you have a virus that is playing. It's playing with you. You're learning at the same time you're trying to fix. Right? It's almost like changing an engine on air. Right? And no one is going to be clever doing that. We're just hoping that they're able to land us safely out of this pandemic.
Yeah. With regards to the pharmaceutical industry as a whole in South Africa, I think it's always a question of are we up to date? Are we up to scratch? How transformed is the industry? Do we have enough players from previously, disadvantaged communities to fill the gap of what we need in South Africa? In particular, what you've just mentioned, that there is so much playroom for everyone in there.
I think the problem that we are facing as a country is that we've allowed our pharmaceutical industry to, we've allowed multinationals to move out of the country. At one time, I think South Africa had about 37 manufacturing facilities that actually closed down. But more of our problem is that over 90% of the drugs that we use in this country are actually imported, right? Which means that we manufacture 10-12% of the drugs that we consume in South Africa, which then says that before you even have a transformation problem, you have a strategic risk as a country, in that you rely on other countries for the survival of your people, right? And we saw that when the world was facing the first wave and there was a lockdown, and countries like India and China saying that they're not going to be exporting any pharmaceuticals. And we are seeing that with the US, which has bought all the vaccines manufactured in the US, which means that those countries that have relied on imported pharmaceuticals are at risk. And then the issue of transformation from a triple BE point of view, this industry is one of the least transformed. There are black pharmaceutical companies. They struggle with what other black people struggle in all other industries. They struggle with funding, and they struggle with access to market. But the Black Pharmaceutical Association Black Pharmaceutical Industry Association has resolved to engage the minister and engage on, in fact, have started engaging with the department on a localization of pharmaceuticals. And it is something that the state has accepted, that we do need to build local pharmaceutical capability. You may have been aware of the reaffirmation of the state pharmaceutical company. These are some of the interventions that are necessary in order, one, for the country to be independent of a key to be independent from foreign companies and foreign multinationals on a key drugs that we use, that the majority of the people use in this country, and to also invest in innovation, in making sure that we can bring down the cost, we can improve the efficacy, we can reduce the toxicity of the drugs, given that when drugs are formulated in Europe or formulated in the US, they're formulated out of our own genome. In other words, they're not designed for us. They're not designed for us. They're designed for other people, and we just become the consumers of whatever surplus that they want to give to us. So we need to get to a point where, as a country, we invest in pharmaceuticals. We also invest in African traditional medicine, which, by the way, is becoming a major force. I think natural herbs are becoming a major force within the pharmaceuticals, in particular in the European countries, which are beginning to have a bias towards plant-based medicines as opposed to synthetic drugs.
Yeah. 360 Global Solutions Group CEO Khandani Msibi, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us. Interesting conversation. Always a pleasure having to hear from you.
Thank you very much.